You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Good evening. It's time for another edition of Maryland Politics. And this day's guest is Steve McIntire, Republican, who is running for House of Delegates seat in District 42A. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Paul.
How you doing?
Good.
Well, first of all, to get our audience familiar with you, tell us about your background.
So I grew up in Stoneleigh, which is one of the neighborhoods there, and it was a pretty nice childhood. Enjoyed it. A lot of freedom, sort of freedom that you don't really get in a lot of neighborhoods anymore. Kids are so regulated. Just being able to ride your bike to your friend's house. So it's those sort of communities that. That are in 42A, and I moved away. I lived in Philadelphia, Baltimore City, and finally Dubai. We were in Dubai for 5 years, and you at some point get homesick. We had 2 kids over there.
Right.
Wanted to move home to be closer to my parents, and we picked Stoneleigh. Every year we came back, we'd be there for the summer, and it just became harder to go back to the desert. So we moved back 2014, and we've enjoyed it. And I never really thought I would be in politics, running for office, but I did just came across some issues that really are disturbing and represent a real threat to the sort of community that I want to live in. So.
Now, what is in your background that you feel that you can translate to political office or public servant? What tools do you have from previous career?
I worked in public policy at a telecom company for a while, and I've followed policy at some level through all of my jobs. I worked as a banker serving a lot of small businesses, so I understand the issues that they face, and they're really the backbone of the economy. Basically just there's some common sense that goes into this. You follow what some of the people who are professional politicians are doing, and just the way they look at issues, and I think a lot of people could do better, but certainly I could do better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why did you decide to run, since you said you never thought that you would ever be running?
I started going to meetings in 2016, the local Republican Club, which is a really good group of people.
Okay.
And one of the early meetings I went to, I found out about this housing settlement, that candidates had agreed to, and I'd been following this issue since Westchester, and that was going on. It seemed to me that it was one of the most radical things in America.
Okay.
Where HUD and the federal government come in and basically, try to re-engineer a local community and do it, through litigation and lawsuits. And at the time, which was, 2013, I remember I looked up Baltimore to see if there was any information available, if this was going on in Baltimore.
Right.
And there wasn't. And I went on with my life, and 3 years later, I find out, in fact, there was something going on, and started asking questions, and there's absolutely no public record of any of this. So there was litigation that was going on. It was in secret, and it just one day results in this huge settlement, $30 million, and relocating 2,000 families, which is some 7,000 people. It's not a small program, and it was done entirely in secret. And I called our county councilman, David Marks, asked him for some information. He couldn't even get the information. So, and I've been working on this for a year and a half, Freedom of Information Act request, Public Information Act request. And, the more you find out, the more disturbing it is. And so that's really what caused me to run here. And I feel that people deserve to know what's going on. It's very deliberately being done outside of the public view. And, that is a big part of my candidacy.
That is really what got you motivated to run for the district seat.
Yes.
And hopefully, and we'll get to this, you have other issues, because I don't want people to kind of stick you in a niche of a one-note candidate.
Yeah, I mean, there are really two major classes of issues. There's preventing, this group of ideologues from Baltimore City from coming in and, really screwing up our neighborhoods and enforcing policies that have clearly failed in Baltimore City on Towson and Baltimore County. But, I mean, what really motivates me to run is to fix a lot of the problems that have been created in Baltimore City, and and some of the things that are being done in like county schools. Dallas Dance. I have 2 kids. This tech program is really a massive experiment that's going on, and I just don't trust that it's being managed properly. And that people are really looking at the benefits to the kids rather than the benefits to themselves and their career and their CV and whether they get a claim at various conferences and things like that.
Okay. Now, you have said too, off camera, that you feel that you do have an uphill battle.
I do, yeah. It's tough to be a Republican, I think, in 2018. There's a lot of kind of negative headwinds. But yeah, it's something I think the people of the district are reasonable, they're pragmatic, they want good government. And the guy I'm running against, especially since he's gerrymandered himself into this like little carve out of a district, has become very much a creature of special interests and partisan interests, and really doing a lot of the bidding for these kind of extreme ideological groups that float around Annapolis. Yeah.
And this is Steve Lafferty.
Steve Lafferty, yes.
And I believe he's already finishing his 3rd term at this point.
He is, yes.
He's been in almost 12 years.
Yep.
And do you feel that in any way he's vulnerable?
Absolutely. I mean, when the ACLU sues your constituents, you should be on the side of your constituents, not on the side of the ACLU. I mean, that is an unforgivable betrayal in my mind, and part of the reason I'm running. And I think if people, had the full story, which is, it's a complex story, but if they knew all the details, there's no way they would continue to vote for him.
But you do have a series of videos that address just this topic, and you've already released one.
Right. It's
And you
a
have a
series of
second
one
one?
right now. A second one's coming out this weekend.
Okay, very good.
Or shortly thereafter, but it's there's a lot of material. It'll be at least 7 of them.
Okay, and having seen the first one, I mean, talk about your opponent. He's featured in there as well as the county executive.
Yes. So, Kamenetz also, the theme of the first episode is betrayal. And there are really 2 politicians in Baltimore County, and a lot of the Democrats were on the right side of this. So it's not an entirely partisan thing. But Kamenetz and Lafferty are really the 2 guys that have betrayed Baltimore County. Kamenetz did this deal. If you actually do the Freedom of Information Act request and look at the lawsuit, it's meritless. There's no way it would have survived, a fight in an actual open court system. But Kamenetz settled this, and there's a little bit of speculation because there's some mix of coercion and collusion that went into his settlement. But he did not want to be seen as being sued by the NAACP while he was running for governor and looking for votes in the Democratic primary of the D.C. suburbs.
All right.
So he agreed, and he basically committed Baltimore County to this ridiculous settlement to help his political career. Steve Lafferty, while that was going on, I mean, he's more of a true believer, less of a kind of political opportunist like Kamenetz was.
I was going to say, what's in it for him?
Yeah, what's in it for him? I mean, he worked for one of the groups that was suing his constituents. He was the general counsel.
Okay. Hopefully not at the time of the suit.
It's not quite that, no.
Not quite that blatant.
It was earlier.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he's an extreme partisan ideologue, and I don't think that, I think he'd probably agree with that characterization. I mean, that's,
Okay.
and when it comes down to, the interests of, the party or the interest of his residents, he's going to go with the interest of the party.
Okay.
So,
And then, along that line, why should people vote for you?
well, I mean, I can first to send a message that this is wrong. I mean, that, this effort to basically impose through anti-democratic means these policies on Baltimore County, the voters, and this is why they're doing it in secret, is that the voters don't want it. They don't want to pay more taxes and get less valuable services, have worse schools, more crime. That's what they're offering. Pay more taxes, get worse services. And people don't want that. So people need to send a message that this won't fly. And that's what I'm offering. I think on most issues, on a broader range of issues, I'm very much in sync with the district. I mean, the district, is concerned about the environment. They want good schools, safe communities. And those are things that I want as well, and have, will make part of my campaign. It's not really a single issue sort of campaign. There's just so many things that we can do better.
Well, you mentioned those. Are those the things that you see as the key issues in your district?
It's funny because my district has a lot of, when I look at my kids' class, and they're kindergarten and first grade, almost half of the parents moved out of Baltimore City. And a lot of them didn't want to, but they were given absolutely no choice because of the city schools. So they had kids, and that is a real injustice. That's a real civil rights issue that needs to be addressed. And, the guy that I'm running against is, he's arch defender of the status quo. The Protect Our Failing Schools Act that was passed that prevented the state from doing anything when you have entire schools where not a single kid test proficient. That was one of his bills. So I think that the voters of 42A, they want the city to be successful. They recognize its failures. They don't want it to be imposed on the county. And the guy that's representing them is opposed to making things better in the city and supports making things worse in the county.
Okay. All right. And part of what, you've been talking about, we know here, and as was talked about, that a lot of people have left the city and gone to the county, but usually it's a lower income that have moved over. And so that the tax base, and revenue, I should say, has gone down in the county. And of course, was something just recently in the media last day or two about how the next county executive will be left with a mess because the idea of, what's in the balance as well as what's in the debt for the county, and certain taxes may have to be raised for the first time in 20 or 30 years.
That's absolutely something that's on the schools, the school construction. We need a new high school, absolutely. It costs over $100 million. It's not just us, it's Delaney, Lansdowne. The schools are aging, and you can do one of three things. You can not build schools, you can raise taxes, or you can cut spending.
Right.
And the next county executive, Kamenetz has written a lot of checks that the next county executive is going to have to cash, including this $30 million check for the affordable housing, relocating 2,000 families. Those are now legal requirements of the county. You can't get out of them. So, all of the cost, though, of those settlements falls on the next guy. And that's one of the things about this that's just absolutely egregious, and it's not the way democracy is supposed to work. Baltimore County residents are going to face a choice. We have to build the schools. That's a cornerstone of all the communities, certainly my district, but I think most of the communities in the county, the cornerstone is excellent public schools. That's what we're striving for. So then what happens? Where do we cut? Or do we raise taxes? Nobody wants to raise taxes.
No, of course not.
County hasn't raised taxes in 20 years.
Exactly.
And I think there are a lot of opportunities with, I've been looking at this, the tech and spending and the contracts that Dallas Dance got us into. I have a background in telecom.
Okay.
There's an 8-figure savings in some of those contracts. The thing about telecom prices is that, the cost is always declining. So you're signing 3-5-year deals for bandwidth and things like that. If you're not going back and renegotiating them constantly, you're paying too much. And they're not going back and renegotiating them. So below the really huge hardware contracts, which are, a couple $100 million, there's another $140 million contract coming down the pipe, apparently. They spent, to lease laptops.
Each child
I think there's a lot of money there. Everyone's looking at that. We need to look at the next layer down also, because there's millions of dollars of savings that would affect absolutely none of the services. It's just driving a better deal with the vendors. And again, the guy I'm running against right now, the audit bill is bottled up in the audit committee because of him. He's the bottleneck to doing this.
Was he in the audit committee?
He is.
Oh, okay. Not the chair, though. No.
He's not the chair, I don't believe.
Oh, okay.
He's the chair of the Baltimore County delegation.
Oh,
but this is something, there's no reason. You have a superintendent who's under indictment, who is spending hundreds of millions of dollars
the one who was
contracts.
The superintendent, Dallas Dance. Yeah.
And you're not going to go back through all of his contracts and audit them? How is that? That's just common sense. But, it interferes with the narrative that, we just need more money and more taxes for the schools if the schools aren't spending the money that they have efficiently and are, wasting a lot of taxpayer money, which is what you would find. So
part of what you're saying is looking for, better, fiscal stewardship on things like education and other things. And it comes again from a part of your background that you did mention. Didn't you graduate from the Wharton School?
I did, yeah.
And so you have an MBA.
Well, I was undergraduate.
Oh, that was undergrad?
Wharton undergrad.
I thought you were an MBA from Wharton.
Yeah.
But you do have it.
We had to work when we were in school. We didn't just go to cocktail parties.
Okay, yeah, you had a grasp of economics, though. Because going to get into that, because, people come in here all the time, politicians, have these general ideas. We want this better. But we want, what are strategies? What are solutions? And, have some of your ideas. Do you have... First, you've been talking about education, so I know you touched on it some. Is there anything else you want to add as far as something you would see as to make the educational system more efficient or better?
Certainly choice. These centralized bureaucracies, kind of top-down rule. This is a model that has been kind of thrown aside in corporate America, and but it's just the public bureaucracies are very resistant to change. Introducing choice, breaking apart the idea that you need this central bureaucracy to provide all the services. But a lot of these services could be purchased through smaller regional consortium. Baltimore County school system it's a huge system. Over 100,000 kids, one of the biggest in the country, and. What are the benefits of having a centralized bureaucracy? Are you really saving money by having all of that power concentrated in this one group? That's one of the things that you would start to find out about an audit.
Right, so you're recommending an audit for one.
Yeah, and you say an audit, you have to define what the audit is and make sure it's done properly and it's actually going to uncover real savings.
Right.
So that would certainly be something that I've done many times before and would want to participate in. Even though it's a county issue, the state, depending on who's responsible for the audit, the state would be involved as well. So, and I'd say, to the greatest extent possible, I'm going to be involved regardless, because even if I'm not in office, I'm still a citizen and a parent. And, I want the county school system to be the best in the country, but also be a responsible steward of taxpayer money.
Because there are a lot of issues, like we've had other candidates in here talk about things like Maryland as a state used to have the #1 school system in the country. and it's been dropping the last so many years.
Yeah.
And what's that
I'll
about?
tell you though, I think a lot of that is actually, I haven't dug into the details and the numbers on that, but I think a lot of that is due to Montgomery County. And Montgomery County is, since when 2013, all of the childhood arrivals, if you bring people in from El Salvador or Central America, unless they've adopted the Common Core behind our backs, they're going to bring down the average results of the district. And you have a significant influx of people into Montgomery County over the last 5 years. So, that will affect test scores, and things like that. The big question is, how does it harm the kids' education? Legal immigrants, citizens. Are their educations being harmed by having this influx? And the verdict's out, and it'll probably be out because I don't think anyone actually wants to ask that question, let alone answer it. But
ask it, that's what we want to do.
It should be asked. Maryland schools have been the best, for a number of years, and the decline, you're still in the top 5. So what's the difference between 1 and 5? At least we're not California. California used to be the best back in the 80s, and now they're fighting for the bottom 5 with Arkansas and Mississippi and
wow, big change.
Some of these. That when I was growing up, that was. California schools were reportedly some of the best in the country. It's a massive change, and they're paying, substantially higher taxes. So, that's that formula.
That's that problem in California.
That's that formula of pay more, get less. And you wouldn't market that, but that's what these policies deliver. Baltimore City, California.
Right. Well, to throw out there, you said choice. What is your position on charter schools?
Absolutely for them. The schools in our district has some of the best public schools, I think. In the county and by extension, in the state. They face absolutely no competition from charters because they're already good.
Public schools are already that good.
Charter schools don't harm good schools.
Right.
They offer a choice when you have a really bad school. I think about, the Stoneleigh, where there's a school that my kids go. What would they have to do? How bad would it have to be that you wouldn't want to send your kid to the neighborhood school?
Yeah.
And it really is that bad in a lot of communities. And it's an absolute tragedy.
A lot of city schools.
The idea that, that we're somehow protecting our good schools by not having charter schools, I think is kind of ridiculous. And it's also, it's a little, it's not, how would you describe it? Like greedy, or, you're not, there's a real opportunity to help Baltimore City and a lot of the neighborhoods that have persistently failing schools. And Maryland is the worst state in the country for charter schools.
Wow.
So
we're behind.
Or second to worst, depending on which
we're
year.
Pretty bad. The other thing I'll bring up to you too is that Maryland taxes, in this piece that we saw, was on our second stream, is about people leave states like Maryland to go to states that either have no state income tax or much lower state income tax.
I know a couple.
And also with that, that doesn't help our base at all. And so people, what can we do with that? That plus Maryland is the only state that has a death tax and an inheritance tax.
Right.
And as far as that will keep people like maybe even myself from having to inherit my parents' home because I may not be able to afford the taxes.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have more vacant housing, which there's a lot of vacant housing in at least my part of the county. There's been a house next to me, but that's been vacant for that reason. Plus also the people who then renovated it priced the house out of the market.
Well, taxes get factored into your property values. If you have high taxes, you see that in Baltimore City. You have 2.3% or 2.25%. You have to pay that every year. So you're paying rent to the government.
Right.
And if you have to do that on top of your mortgage, it decreases the value of the property. That's basic. That's like finance 101. In Maryland, I mean, Maryland, we really need to just hold the line on, what the Democrats have in store, which, the Kirwan Commission is this thing that is designed to set up a huge tax increase, huge spending increase. They didn't get the report out this year, coincidentally, because it's an election season, but it's coming out, and if we don't re-elect Governor Hogan, there's going to be a multi-billion-dollar tax increase coming down the pipe, and they'll say it's for education, but we'll see where it actually ends up.
An idea of what
We'll end up like the casino money,
what the Kirwan Commission says, but
right. Well, we know what they're going to say. That they're going to say that we need to spend a couple $1 billion more on education.
The governor,
I'm sure they're going to have some good points. They've obviously done a lot of work, but the way it was set up, it's rigged to come to that outcome.
I mean, the governor recently had said he was going to make sure that somebody had put a lockbox on the casinos and the money gets to education, which was promised, and it hasn't. Just like somebody told me at the beginnings of the Maryland lottery, to sell the lottery idea to the citizens of Maryland, money's going to go to education.
Right.
And look where education is in Maryland right now.
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of money. That's one.
But it depends on what it spends on, like maybe trips for the county commissioner, or school commissioner, or whoever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what about other issues? A lot of times people, not just what you think a local issue, but, issues that are important to you and your family.
One thing that's exciting, in our district is this idea of a greenway connecting Towson almost out to Loch Raven Boulevard.
Okay.
The first leg is already in the works, and it will go to Stevenson Lane through one of the neighborhoods. It's about a mile long. But that would be just a really cool resource, and ultimately, you can carry it through to Herring Run Park, and it could become a major regional resource.
Right.
You can almost make it to the Back Bay through. It would go nearly 20 miles, I think. So that's something that would really I think is exciting, and I'm looking forward to working on more when the weather breaks a little bit. Get out and kind of walk it, and I mean, the thing is the parks most of the parks are there. The space is there. You don't have to acquire land. You just need to it's a way to get a lot of bang for the buck. It would create a really cool amenity, I think.
Well, you're in Towson, and another big thing we're talking about, it links in with environment, is transportation. And beltway traffic. And things like that, and alternative forms of transportation, or like I say, a greenway where people may be able to walk or bike, or through certain areas. That what, if any, issues do you have about transportation solutions?
I like neighborhood electric vehicles. I think that's something that is an interesting, especially for a district like ours that's so dense. It's one of the densest districts outside Baltimore City in the state. Small electric vehicles. And that's something where the regulatory framework is there. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit. But you can make them street legal, and $5,000, drive them on roads up to 30 miles an hour. And they're clean, efficient. You need a second car, but you only need to take it to the grocery store. You don't have to go out and buy a $30,000 car. I mean, it doesn't, the neighborhood electric vehicle doesn't have airbags. You're not going to take it on the highway. Those are the sort of, things like that, little things make a difference. In terms of Towson, we're dealing with York Road has some issues, bottlenecks. It's just an old road, and new development that comes into Towson. We need to address that in the long run. Certainly, bike lanes are something that everybody wants, so we want to be able to accommodate that. But yeah, I mean, Towson is the urban core of Baltimore County, and there's going to be more development, and we really need to plan for it.
The infrastructure issues. I mean, so it's been a lot of fights over there about, what cabinets wants to put somewhere where, this old firehouse used to be.
Oh, right, yeah, I mean, cabinets is, he's just so blatantly in bed with this one developer. It's kind of ridiculous.
Is it the same developer?
It's the same developer.
About your series? Is it the same developer?
No, that developer doesn't, he's not in this series as far as I know, although
Okay.
I have some Freedom of Information Act requests coming down, so
How about that
you
guy?
may make an appearance, I don't know.
In your series?
No, they're more the commercial developers, and that's the thing that they did with this hotel was I read the report that supposedly justified their need for a $40 million subsidy, and it doesn't provide any case that they actually need the subsidy. All they do is
Right.
calculate how much they'll generate in tax revenue over the next 20 years, and then use that calculation to say, why don't you just cut me a check right now for the taxes I'll pay over the next 20 years,
Right.
which is, and that's what the county did by 43 votes,
I don't know
$40 million.
I don't know your district that well, to say, like downtown Towson,
Yeah,
is that part of your district?
yes.
It is. And
Yeah.
part of the problems I would see, because I did go to Towson University, that you have all these businesses and everything, all small businesses mostly, all along York Road in the downtown part. But York Road itself there, because it's an old village, that is still a very narrow street, and traffic is still a big problem.
Yeah, it's actually worse when you go south, because at least with York Road through Towson, you don't get through traffic, you can go around Bosley Avenue.
Yeah, that's true, you could do that.
So,
And go down into Govins or something.
yeah, there are a couple of bottlenecks that you need to deal with, but you can accommodate more people in Towson. The big issues are the schools, and the Towson High School. What are we building that to capacity for? Right now, I think it's 1,800 students,
Right.
which is a big school. It's a
Right.
really big school.
Right, and the interesting,
How do we deal with another 1,000 kids that
Exactly.
live in Towson?
Right. Exactly.
Do we build another school? Do we build a 2,800 person school? That's a major issue that I'm not really confident people are thinking about at the county
Right.
level. The capacity planning that they do every year, Stoneleigh Elementary, my kid's school, they project a certain number of students, and then they beat it by 10 or 15%. And then we have to scramble around to get another teacher. They just did a renovation 4 years ago, and it's almost over capacity again. So,
Okay.
this is, again, I think a lot of that is the millennial generation having kids and making the same path out of the city, unfortunately, that they don't want to. They want to stay in the city, but they're
Right.
moving out because they have no choice. Yeah.
Well, before we stop here, I was going to say your series of videos is a unique
Yes.
way to, I guess, get your campaign out there.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just giving their little speech and gung-ho, but you're saying, here's an issue, and I've dug into it, and this is what you should know, and it does, maybe in a subtle way, sort of get at Steve Lafferty, your opponent, without you actually slinging mud.
It's not that subtle.
But you're not slinging mud at him. And the
It's-
county
facts,
executive.
Facts aren't mean. They're
No, yeah, I know.
facts.
And the county executive would be maybe a little upset by what's
Right,
coming out. I don't know if
right.
you've heard from his press people yet, but before we do
He
stop,
hasn't yelled at me yet.
Oh,
so
good.
I'm obviously not doing a good enough job.
well, okay, that's right, you got to get out there and stir it up. So give us a few, to the audience, your closing comments. Why should people remember you and why you were here today?
Listen, I just want to do two things. I want to help Towson and keep these ideologues who are really have a plan for regional government that is not in our interest. Keep them at bay, and also just do a lot of common sense things that would make a huge difference in our city, and I mean the whole metropolitan area. And check out my site. I'm focused on the details of policy, not necessarily the sound bites. And anyway, look forward to meeting you on the campaign trail.
Okay, and tell people your contact information,
Oh,
please.
Steve, it's stevemcintyre.org. It's McIntire with an I. And on Facebook, it's McIntire 4MD.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for being here tonight,
Thank you.
Steve, especially on a rainy night.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. And so, folks, that's the end of another Maryland Politics show here on TV Free Baltimore. We'll see you next time and real soon.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.